Invasions bring warrior gods, which is why we need threshold guardians. When you die, and you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior, you will arrive at the pearly gates of heaven, guarded by St. Peter. St. Peter will then determine whether to grant you entry. He is the threshold guardian of heaven. However, if you're a degenerate sinner and you go to the club, you'll meet the bouncer. And the bouncer will determine whether or not to let you in. There is a threshold guardian for each door you come to. It could be a Schlage or Kwikset lock, but it is a threshold guardian. It determines whether you have access because of your compatibility with what's inside. In The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Joseph Campbell talks about how the threshold guardians, they guide the higher silence within a society. And what that means is that the cultural cohesion around a set of actions, around a system in which they operate, around a God, depending on which culture, hopefully Jesus, but a God. The Bible even states that in the later chapters of the book of Joshua that when you go to these distant lands, there will be other gods. The threshold guardian is what wards off the other gods from entering your land, because invasions bring warrior gods. What that really means is when those people, whoever they may be, come into a new land, they will bring their fighting spirit with them. They're not going to leave that at home, because it must come with you everywhere you go. Your warrior god travels everywhere with you. So invasions bring warrior gods, but they are met and warded off by threshold guardian. Off the top of my head, there's a couple examples of this in comics, or in comic adjacent media. The first that comes to mind is the Justice League Unlimited episode, where Amazo comes back in search of Lex Luthor. Amazo, a hostile threat to Earth, is coming in to take one of our own.
Why have you come back? What do you want?
Why do you ask questions you already know the answer to?
Luthor.
Of course.
We're not gonna give him up.
He's your enemy. You owe him nothing.
Turn back now.
Granted, it's not that Lex is some upstanding hero worthy of protection, but he is one of our own. Who meets him? They have 3 tiers, a team in space, a team in the sky, and a team on the ground to ward off this invader. And who is at the front of the line? Superman. Superman is the ultimate threshold guardian of DC Comics, because he is the first to ward off Amazo, and he is the first to ward off foreign invaders who mean us harm. Another example I can think of is in Batman Volume 7, Endgame by Scott Snyder. Batman is fighting a Jokerized and brainwashed version of the Justice League. They have been compromised by Joker's toxin and are all attacking him. Batman puts on this big Justice League fighting mech suit and gets ready for the fight of his life. He says something along the lines of, "You thought you could take me? You thought you could take me in my city?" No, he can't let that stand, because Gotham is his territory. That is where his higher silence exists. The brainwashed Justice Leaguers invade, and Batman has to fend them off. He has to protect himself, and he has to protect Gotham. He has to protect that cultural cohesion of the city from these invading warrior gods. So anytime that you meet some sort of barrier, there will be something there to keep that barrier closed, unless you are granted access because you are compatible to the higher silence within. The higher silence, once again referring to cultural cohesion, through pretty much any cultural aspect you can think of, whether that's religion, cuisine, sports, dance and literature and literally any cultural aspect you can think of. Culture itself will deteriorate without the Threshold Guardian. The Threshold Guardian is what keeps the culture cohesive, because once that foreign influence is there and it's incompatible and it doesn't assimilate to the culture of the land that they are in, then the native culture disintegrates. It disintegrates completely because it becomes so sectionalized and it becomes so tribalistic that one cohesive culture cannot exist. Granted, there are subcultures, but it's about what adheres you to the highest ideal. It's about the cultural ethos. This set of actions is what makes you a DC fan. This set of actions is what makes you an American. This set of actions is what makes you a Christian. Whatever it may be, you can get past the Threshold Guardian because you are coherent and you are at least adaptable to the culture of the present space. It is no different. Gandalf stands on the bridge and says, "You shall not pass." He is acting as a Threshold Guardian to protect the higher silence of his fellowship, because that is what he draws the border around. That is the cultural cohesion, the Fellowship of the Ring. There are seemingly infinite examples of this throughout mythology, throughout comics, throughout films, throughout literature, whatever it may be, because it represents the barrier that you establish so that you may have a space to be who you are. If you were to allow just anybody in, if there were no Threshold Guardian, you would cease to exist because of the dilution of the culture, the original state of being. We have to have Threshold Guardian. That is not optional. We need men to take up their sword, to defend the higher silence, to defend the cultural cohesion, or else it will cease to exist. If there is no barrier, if there is no lock on the door, then we do not have a home.